Next up are presentations and public input. First item is a presentation by Scott Dossett and Tony Allegretti, and it's on the elimination of CPRB membership restrictions based on felony convictions. And I would ask if Mayor Pro Tem Dennis Roberts could take over the chair for a few minutes. I need to sign a document.
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a presentation. Are we ready for that presentation?
Hello, yes, we're ready. It's mostly just talking points. It's not really a PowerPoint of any sort.
However you want to do it.
Okay, just for all who don't know, my name is Tony Allegretti. I'm one of the members of the CPRB. I know Mr. Dossett was going to join via phone. I don't know if he's here yet or not. He has
not joined yet.
Okay. Either way, the resolution that we passed out of our board dealt with removing section 19-22C of the CPRB ordinance, which would remove the requirement that a person, in order to serve on the board, not have a criminal felony conviction or plea to serve. We are requesting that be removed from the ordinance. I can answer questions that the council may have about why we're seeking that. Generally, I think it seeks to, or by removing section C, it really helps to fulfill the goal of section D, which would allow the mayor to further endeavor to reflect the community to serve on the board. As the council is probably well aware, interactions with the criminal legal system don't span equally across all races, classes, genders, ages, and so having a felony conviction also would unequally impact different communities or different sub-communities in Urbana. There are a number of reasons why people may decide to plead to a felony conviction. A number of those have nothing to do with their culpability to the offense. Also, we believe that the blanket ban on all felonies is very restrictive. There are a number of felonies that are non-violent that someone can be convicted of. Felony traffic conviction for driving on a suspended license is one offense. There are a number of prior offenses that someone can be elevated to a felony conviction, and really that's all dependent on what the state's attorney decides to charge, and that varies from county to county, state to state. We think it'd be more equitable to remove that requirement for someone to serve on the board. Again, modifying the ordinance to remove section C doesn't remove any sort of control that the mayor has to appoint people to the board. So we believe there's still plenty of ability for the mayor and the others who are deciding who to put on the board to make the proper call if someone with a prior with a felony conviction were to apply to be on the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
And I see that Scotty Dossett's now currently also online. Yes, Mayor.
I'm back, so I can take back the meeting. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Thank you. So any questions for either of the presenters? Mary Alice and then Bill.
So in spirit, I'm in support of this change. I had two questions. I watched the CPRB last meeting, and I think there was a discussion in terms of how to change the ordinance. And it seemed to me that the idea was to come with a group of changes and not one-offs. So it sounds to me like right now the board is discussing all of the different particulars, and then is the intent of the board to give us an updated document with everything that you've kind of come to an agreement with?
Scott, if you want to take that one, I know we had discussed doing that.
Yeah, can you hear me, Tony?
Yes.
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 Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I don't remember the conversation, Mary Alice. I'm sorry. I I think what we understand is that there is sort of a bank of necessary changes to the ordinance. And then, we're entering with this suggestion here to council into, you might call them sort of optional sort of changes to the ordinance. It was my intention when I made the motion to pass this forward to add the felony exclusion to the bank that I know Carolyn Mitten and Lamond are aware of and are working on for future presentation to council in the context of an ordinance rewrite.
Okay. And then my second question had to do, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm incorrect, I think that when CPRB was originally formed, there was some kind of rider that was put on the FOP's contract. And so I'm wondering if this is in conflict with anything that was in that contract.
Well, for certain, there are at least one or two other things that have come up in conversation and have been discussed at the board that are in conflict with the FOP. And in fact, knowing that that agreement is soon to be negotiated or maybe in the middle of negotiation now was one of the reasons that it seemed as if this was an opportune time to offer this so that city staff and the union could negotiate those terms.
There is a side letter specifically related to this topic in the FOP contract. So yes, you're right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, that was pretty much my question. I think we've had the votes on council to eliminate this for at least 8 years. I think the side letter to FOP contract has been definitely a bind. If I was an officer thinking about negotiating that part, I might counter offer, well, if we allow felons or convicted felons or former felons on the CPRB, can we also have retired police officers or people that have been involved in law enforcement? Because that's currently prohibited too, if I remember right. Did you guys talk about that at all? And how would you feel about that if we allowed both?
Yeah, we did. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we did discuss that, and we felt, and I think there was some general agreement that the officer's position or side of any one of these complaints is going to be presented by the police that are presenting at any particular complaint. We didn't think it was necessary to remove that ban on law enforcement from serving on the board. Because it's a citizens police review board. If you have the police reviewing the police, we felt that it wouldn't really give any credence or lend any credence to the board, or it may diminish the integrity of the board or views from the community that if you are just going to have another internal police review board, in effect that, it takes away from what the board is supposed to do. So we did not think that removing both at the same time was necessary. The section C, removing the felony conviction, I think it's a false dichotomy that felons on the board and police on the board are removing those two as somehow removing two diametrically opposed groups of people. If that answers the question. It's not cops and robbers,
Right.
when it comes down to putting people on the board.
I'm just thinking from a negotiating standpoint, what might be possible. Thanks.
Any other questions? Sharice?
So when you're thinking about are there particular felonies that you're thinking about for certain that like, is there going to be a list, or how is that going to be organized? Or listed, or is it all felonies, or is it people who have done their time and, or have done their probation or parole or whatever? I mean, that's what I mean, because I don't know if you have an idea of any particular felonies that, like you said, a lot of things can be raised to a felony that's maybe nonviolent or anything like that. So
Sure. We had just what we had proposed was just removing that section. We didn't get into particular felonies or discussing, do we want to draw a line at violent felonies or forcible felonies? That may be something that comes up as Mr. Brown discussed with negotiating with the FOP about, where this, where the chips end up falling. Just speaking for myself, I could see that being a point of contention about, the blanket ban and then turning it over into a blanket removal. There's a number of shades of gray that perhaps this ends up coming to. But all the CPRB did was propose to bring this before the council to remove section C. We thought that was the cleanest thing to do.
Yeah, I might just add that, this is all predicated on the fact that, the mayor uses his or her judgment in terms of appointments to the board. And we talked a little bit about classification of felonies in the meeting, but not a lot. But what I suspect is that someone who had committed a violent felony wouldn't, they might apply, but probably wouldn't pass muster through the interview process.
The other thing, I mean, if we're talking about someone who has been convicted of a serious felony and is likely to be sentenced to serve, a considerable amount of time behind bars in the Department of Corrections, that person who comes out on the other end is definitely not the same person who went in. And that insight or view of that person, the CPRB doesn't necessarily think it's going to be diminished just because they have been convicted and served time for a criminal offense. The whole idea is to be restored and rehabilitated and ready to serve and maybe a productive member of society. And if we, further continue to treat people with felony convictions as, modern day scarlet letter holders, then they're never going to really be able to be reintegrated into society. And serving on a board like this or being, engaged in civics of their community is something that shouldn't be prevented just because they've been convicted of a felony.
Yeah, that's well said, Tony. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, this will be obviously part of discussions at CPRB going forward, and eventually you'll see some recommendations for changes to the ordinance. Bill Colbrook.
I don't have a question, but I've got a comment.
Well, I'm going to remind folks that this is a time for questions for the presenters, and then if we want to add this for further discussion on an agenda, we can put that on another agenda. But
okay,
this isn't a time for council discussion or commentary. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Scott and Tony.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.